Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 2021 American Diabetes Association Living with Diabetes Ask the Expert series. Today's topic is Start and Maintain an Active Lifestyle. My name is Carla Cox, registered dietitian nutritionist and certified diabetes care and education specialist, and your host for today's program. Our Ask the Expert series is all about answering questions from our listeners, so start getting your questions ready. For those of you on the phone, press *3, that's *3 on your keypad, and an operator will collect your question and place you in the queue so that you may have the opportunity to ask your questions live. To participate online, type in your name and question in the fields below the streaming player. Press the Submit Question button, and your question will come directly to us. Stay with us through the hour, and you will learn useful tips to help you live well on your journey with diabetes. In addition, we invite you to provide us with your feedback in our 5-question survey at the end of the event. Okay, now a little bit about why we're here. Because of the link between diabetes and heart health, the American Diabetes Association, in collaboration with the American Heart Association, has launched No Diabetes by Heart, with support from founding sponsors the Boehringer, Ingelheim, and Eli Lilly and Company Diabetes Alliance and Novo Nordisk, as well as national sponsors Santa Fe, AstraZeneca, and Bayer. The No Diabetes by Heart initiative provides tools and resources for people living with type 2 diabetes to learn how to reduce their risk of cardiovascular disease. As part of the initiative, the ADA is holding this free educational Q&A once a month. We'll cover information and tips to help you take charge of your health. The health and safety of all those we serve at the ADA is always our top priority. COVID-19 continues to be a public health threat. In general, people with diabetes who get COVID face greater challenges with maintaining glucose within target range. And if glucose levels have been elevated over time, they also have increased risk of complications when dealing with viral infections. And that is true of COVID as well. Current CDC recommendations to protect yourself state that you wash your hands often. If soap and water are not readily available, use hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Practice safe social distancing and put distance between yourself and other people, especially those you do not know. Cover your mouth and nose with a mask or cloth face covering when you are indoors. And if you are fully vaccinated, you can resume activities that you did prior to the pandemic. Fully vaccinated people can resume activities without wearing a mask or physically distancing, except when expected to do so by the federal, state, local, tribal, or territorial laws, rules, and regulations, including local businesses that choose to do so and workplace guidance. We encourage persons with diabetes to get vaccinated, and if you have questions about the vaccination, please talk with your healthcare provider. The ADA encourages people with diabetes to follow the guidance of the CDC and to contact your medical provider if you suspect that you are showing symptoms or have been exposed to COVID-19. For our most up-to-date information, please visit our website at diabetes.org/coronavirus or call 1-800-DIABETES or 1-800-342-2383. Like many of you, we are still practicing social distancing, and so we are proud to present this month's Q&A from our homes. I am happy to introduce Karen Kemmis as our expert today. Dr. Kemmis is a physical therapist, registered nurse, and an adjunct professor at SUNY, Sunny Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York. She earned an associate's degree in professional nursing, bachelor's and doctoral degrees in physical therapy, and has a master's degree in exercise science. She specializes in exercise prescription for people with diabetes, osteoporosis, orthopedic conditions, runners, and with those with balance and mobility dysfunction. She is a past president of the Association of Diabetes Care and Education Specialists and a certified diabetes care and education specialist. And I will also say that I'm delighted. I've known Karen for some time and so happy that she's here with us. She's a wonderful resource for us all. So Karen, please add a few lines to our introduction today.
Well, thank you, Carla, and it is a pleasure to be here today. As Carla said, my name is Karen Chemis, and I have been so fortunate to be working in the specialty of diabetes care and education for over 25 years. It's gone by quickly. So I'm really happy to be here today and excited to address your questions.
Thank you. As we're waiting for our callers and online listeners to chime in, I'm going to go ahead and kick off its first question. How important is it for persons to find an exercise program that fits them individually?
Well, I think that's honestly the key to being physically active or exercising is to have a program that does suit somebody individually. So what does that mean? The most important thing, I think, is that people should think about what their goals are, because that's what should guide any physical activity or exercise program. And then everybody has different abilities and different schedules and different interests and, different social things. So having something that suits an individual really will set each of us up for more success. The other part of that question is how important is it for a person to have an exercise program? And of course, I'm a huge advocate of people being physically active and exercising. And it's really important for every single one of us to be physically active and do exercise for our physical and emotional health.
Thank you. If you're just joining us, welcome to today's Ask the Experts Q&A. We're going to discuss the relationship between diabetes and stroke and how to lower your risk utilizing exercise as a tool to keep you healthier. As a reminder, for those of you on the phone, press *3 on your keypad and an operator will collect your question and place you in a queue so that you may have the opportunity to ask your question live. To participate online, type in your name and question in the fields below the streaming player. Press the Submit Question button and your question will come directly to us. Remember, today's topic is starting and maintaining an active lifestyle. So let's remember to focus on that topic for today's event when asking questions. Now let's take our first question. Jesse, you're on the line. What is your question?
My question is, I have terrible neuropathy in my feet. So I can only walk a couple of feet before I get tired and the pain gets too bad. What should I do?
That's such a great question, Jesse. And, I think that's going to hit a lot of people on this call. So many people do have neuropathy or other issues with feet, ankles, lower legs that limit their activity. We often think of walking as a way to get exercise, and it is a fantastic way to get exercise, but it doesn't suit everybody. So sometimes if we think about being more active or exercising, we'd want to look to some other form of activity that's not going to bother the neuropathy, and then to save walking for normal daily activities. So kind of the basics of exercise, there's 4 big categories: cardiovascular or aerobic, which walking is, strength training, flexibility, and balance. And I think the first thing we think of is aerobic exercise, going for a walk, getting on a bike. But strength training is incredibly important to help how we function. It actually supports all of our aerobic activities, and a lot of strength training won't impact your feet so much. So if you can do some strength training, that can actually help your body move better without irritating your feet and ankles from the pain of neuropathy. So strength training can be done at a gym, of course, but that could be a barrier to people. There's also some really nice, fairly simple strength training exercises that can be done at home, and that might require a little bit of working with a professional to get those good exercises. But if you can get stronger legs, stronger core, stronger upper body, that could help you to be more active, get a lot of the benefits of exercise without the problems with neuropathy. So part of this is kind of working around the neuropathy, not irritating it. There is a little bit of evidence that says if you can work into the neuropathy pain a bit, it can help to improve your tolerance. I know that's easy to say and hard to do. So to focus on some strength training to help support your walking is perhaps a better idea. And the other thing I'm going to throw in here is oftentimes people with neuropathy have balance problems and have an increased risk of falls. So that category of balance exercise becomes a really important one, perhaps a little bit more important than aerobic. And then the third little piece of that is if somebody does have access to exercise equipment or something that's not going to be so troublesome to the feet, that creates a good option. So a stationary bike, perhaps an outdoor bike, if there's no open areas, being in the water for exercise where there's a lot less strain. A lot of exercise equipment doesn't put the same irritation into the feet as walking does. So I hope that that's helpful. And I think that's a question a lot of people do have as far as their activity and having neuropathy. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great because there are quite a few questions on that question. So, Cynthia from Louisiana, you're on the line.
Yes, I would like to know, I know the doctor touched on it a little bit, and she mentioned strength training, but how do I maintain an active lifestyle when I have chronic back pain, arthritis, and I'm a diabetic? Because your back is a main source of your support system. So what could I do?
Yeah, so again, as a physical therapist in this field, this is kind of, what I mostly work on. Equipment's tough because it can be costly, it can take up space, sometimes it's boring, but equipment does open up avenues for more exercise. So when I work with an individual, and you all are individuals here, I'll tend to say, what is it that causes an increase in your pain, and what types of positions or activities either decrease it or don't irritate it? And usually we can start to put together a bit of a pattern. So for example, if somebody says, when I walk, it increases my back pain and my knees start to bother me, or my feet start to bother me, then walking doesn't become the best option. Again, we have to do that in our daily lives, and it's important to maintain that. But to choose exercise or activity to get all those other benefits that doesn't involve walking would be helpful. So oftentimes if a back is bothered by standing and walking, it's better in a sitting position. So a stationary bike, a recumbent bike, doing an exercise video and sitting, those are all helpful. And then I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but going back to the strength training. So strength training is done carefully with some assistance to get started. We tend to, try to engage the core to support our body as we do arm and leg strengthening. So that's going to help with the back pain. And then exercises should be chosen that are really helpful, but do not irritate those areas. And here's the other thing about strength training. The stronger our muscles are around a joint that has arthritis, the less we have pain. So in the back, there's these little deep muscles that support the spine. We talk about the core muscles, the abdominals as well. The stronger they are, the more we can try to do activities without pain. And then I'll jump to the area that I tend to see the second most pain and problems with arthritis, knees. So the big muscle on the front of the thigh is the quadricep, and that is the main support for the knee, and it's actually a shock absorber. So if there's irritation in the joint from arthritis or some other injury, if through careful strengthening that big thigh quadricep muscle can be stronger, it actually helps the knee to work better and have less symptoms, less pain, less weakness. So again, looking at strength training, and again, that can be done in a gym, at home, usually with some guidance initially, but then on your own once you get situated with a program.
Those are really helpful. I think it would be good to chime in here now and say something about just making an appointment to see a physical therapist. I think physical therapists are incredibly underused when you have things like arthritis and back pain, And almost all of us, as we get older, have some place where we're uncomfortable and could use a little bit of help understanding. You know, when Karen says strengthen those muscles, well, where are they and how do we do that? So making an appointment, and Medicare will generally pay for that, as will other insurances. So I think ask for a referral, and in some instances we may not even need a referral, and make that appointment to see a physical therapist, even if it's only once, and maybe repeated visits depending on what you come up with. But, you know, Karen, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, I think that's a big, important piece.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's funny because being a physical therapist, I feel like, oh, this is a big sales pitch, but it breaks my heart to think that people think that they need to live with a problem when they've not sought out care. Now, I know we can't fix everything. So I'm sure there's a lot of people on the line that say, oh, I went to physical therapy and I'm still having trouble with this. But, you know, try it again, you know, make adjustments or whatever. But I think that's such a good way to get guidance. When I have somebody do an exercise, I want to watch them do it. I want to make sure that the exercise is done really well, and that I'm constantly saying, like, let me know if you get any pain, because I want to make adjustments. There are hundreds of ways to do any type of, you know, strengthening or stretching, and so it is my job as a physical therapist to find the one that suits you the best. I think a lot of people do believe that, well, you know, I've got arthritis, what can help that? But we can do pretty well. The other small piece of it, and this isn't as rewarding, but if the pain stays similar in intensity, but you can do a lot more because your muscles, joints are working better, then at least that's a benefit. So, oh, I can walk further now, or I can get up the stairs and my knees don't bother me as much doing that. So definitely that's a great idea. And work with the physical therapist, and you be part of you're the key person on the team to guide this. So if you go in and say, you know, I'd like a home program, I'm going to do strengthening, I do want to go to a gym or I don't want to go to a gym, I'm hoping within a couple visits you can help me get something going. The therapist should always work with you and get you set in the, you know, the manner that suits you the best. And I do that a lot. I like to see people twice, because once I teach an exercise, I kind of like a person to do it and come back, make sure it's okay, make sure it's being done properly. So a couple or three good solid visits you can really accomplish a lot. So work with the therapist. Thanks, Carla.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now we have an excellent question coming in from Jonah from Berkeley, California.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for taking my question. My question is, I respected all what you said, but when you're dealing with a disability like I am, I have cerebral palsy from birth and legally blind. I can't do all the things that you're suggesting. And let me just say this: Medicare has a limit, like 12 sessions with a physical therapist. So even if you recommend something for those people, recommend something to do at home, they need an aid at some point to help them. So what do you recommend?
So that can be the case, and it, you know, I don't ever mean to make it sound like it's easy, because it is not. If it was, this wouldn't be an issue, right? You know, we all can do whatever we want, and we can fit it in, and we love doing it. That's not reality. So again, I would work with the therapist to say, you know, I know I have a limit because of Medicare, and a lot of the other insurances will limit as well. I really want to do the most I can to help myself with my exercise. Can we work on a program and to learn those exercises? But again, it is my job as a physical therapist to work with everybody's individual abilities and to try to find the best situation. So if you have maybe one arm that doesn't move as well, to be able to work on how can you assist that arm and how can the other arm do the best it can do. The other thing you bring up with being legally blind is, you know, that's a huge part of it, and that it is a big restrictor. I'm doing a talk in a month or so to a group that specifically deals with people with diabetes and visual impairment or blindness. So I've kind of delved into it a little bit. And there are some exercise videos that can guide you well. Definitely some of them don't guide somebody who can't see as well. But there are a lot that can at least help talk through different exercises. One thing is if you're home and doing exercises and a video is telling you what to do and you don't do it quite like they mean, who cares, because you're, there by yourself. You don't have to match anybody. But maybe to try to look into videos and use your body the best you can. And when you do have Medicare and some of those insurance limitations, it makes sense to do what you can in one episode. So maybe you go a set of times, you get the best exercise program, and then annually go back, because it's a new year and we change and our abilities change. And so, just like we go to the dentist twice a year, we, maybe go to a physician once a year, it's okay to go back to a physical therapist annually, get a new assessment. How are things going? What are the most important things for you to work on? And adjust your program as needed. So there's huge challenges, and again, I don't mean to minimize that, but if you can work to do the best you can to help your particular mobility situation.
Thank you. We have another question on someone who is legally blind and struggling a little bit with figuring out. So we're going to go to Hamp from New Jersey. Hamp?
Yes, how you doing? I definitely understand the last question, being legally blind and everything. And my concern is, I guess to pretty much answer my question, I wanted to ask you about, I guess, looking to get, video that explains more into details of how to do it and everything. And I also want to say, I have, over the years, I've had problems with my feet also, and I learned my right foot. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing the name right. I think the doctor said it was called a sacroiliac, but I have no arch in the bottom of my right foot. So the balance is real hard at times, trying to do exercise and get the balance with that foot and no arch in the foot, with the bone on the bottom of the foot. So, that was my main question, was being legally blind and having that arch in the foot, what would you recommend a good, I guess, activity or exercise routine regimen of doing, being legally blind and with an arch in the foot and trying to get the balance to, do the proper and correct of exercise?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and there's other people on this call that have it's a Charcot foot, CHRCOT, and it does mean that where your arch is supposed to sit, that the nerves actually impact the bones, negatively affect the bones, and that arch collapses down. And the challenge with that is that if any of us feels the arch of our foot, it's generally pretty soft skin, which sounds nice, but it's not used to bearing weight. So now you've got bones pushing into the soft skin. So unfortunately, walking as an exercise is not a good option with somebody with a Charcot foot, because we really want to limit walking to our normal activities of daily living and not overstrain that area. So that brings us to a few options. One is equipment. So if somebody's on, if your foot is settled down to the point where your provider said it's okay to do some things, then being on a stationary bike, any sorts of equipment, a sitting stepper can be useful, and those would not require vision to be able to manage. They get boring, so I think having some music or a show or books on tape or something that you enjoy is really going to be important in those situations. So that helps as far as the aerobic activity, which is really important. There are specific balance exercises that I love working with people with balance activities, because it's kind of fun to think of different things. So working with a physical therapist or a community balance program, but a physical therapist to get started with so it suits you, to help your body to know how to balance better and take some of the strain away from that foot. So I definitely would suggest a physical therapist in that situation. And then I'm going to go back to the strength training, because we can do so much strength training in a safe situation in your home without putting undue stress onto the foot. And then a big component of balance is strength. So if your foot's not quite doing its job because of for balance, which is the case with neuropathy and other foot issues, we've got to look to other parts of the body to do their job better. So the knees got to do, the muscles around the knees have to do a better job. The muscles around the hips have to do a better job. Our core has to do a better job. We have to have better balance in spite of the nerves or the foot not being up to par. So you do balance exercises, and basically with those, they can be a little unsettling, because your job in a balance exercise is to be a little off balance, and that's not necessarily comfortable for people. You can be safe. You can be in a corner with a solid chair in front of you, or get a wall or a solid table to protect part of you. Have something for your hands nearby, and the therapist will help to guide you on exercises or movements or activities that make you a little off balance, so you're safe, but you're making your body balance in spite of the challenges. And you can choose all different things. Again, the therapist can work with you with lots of different activities, and that's really important, because you don't want to have an increased risk of falls. And of course, if you can't use your eyes and your feet aren't giving you good information, you have an increased risk of falls. So I would definitely encourage some sessions with a physical therapist to work on balance, and then they may suggest a community program to continue working on balance. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. You'll be humbled by it, because you'll be off balance. That's part of the deal. And hopefully you can gain, better mobility because of it.
Great, thank you. We have a write-in question, and that is differentiating between a personal trainer and a physical therapist.
Sure. So a physical therapist, we go through an academic program and have to sit for state licensing boards, which demonstrates that we have a certain level of knowledge and competency. It's physical therapist now, it's a 6 to 7 year program, and we have to get a doctorate to graduate and come out and work in the field. A personal trainer, there's a huge variety. Some personal trainers might, have no academic background. Maybe they like to work out, and they go through a program and they get a certificate, all the way up to some of the physical therapy students I teach are personal trainers. So they might have, an exercise science degree or some other degree. So it's a little less predictable to know what the knowledge is with a personal trainer, but engage in a conversation before you work with them and ask, what are their certificates, how much have they worked in the field, do they have knowledge about, and then fill in the blank for what your issues are. Do they understand diabetes? Do they know what a Charcot foot is? Do they understand neuropathy? And try to find the right person to work with. Insurance will pay for a physical therapist, not for a personal trainer, but like we said before, there's an end to that. Personally, as a physical therapist, I look to engage with personal trainers in my community, because it's wonderful if I can finish working with somebody and say, here are a few people that you might want to continue working with. And you might need to do that one-on-one as a pay program, or there might be group sessions. Often if you join an exercise club, you'll have a few free sessions. And there's other people to kind of look at too. Our physical therapist assistant program in the community does a community balance program to give the students some exposure. So look around for those sorts of programs as well.
So one of the things I think about when I look at personal trainers versus physical therapists is I think of physical therapists as if you have an injury or a, arthritis or those kinds of issues, that they may be more well trained to deal with those, where I look at a trainer as helping you stay fit. Is that incorrect?
No, that's true. So I think physical therapists and exercise physiologists are two groups that within those programs we learn how the body's supposed to work, and we learn about problems with how the human body works. So diseases, disorders, limited abilities, and how to take those into account for the most safe and effective program. Personal trainers would generally have a lot less background in, I'll say, pathology, things wrong that aren't working well with the body. So if you went to a personal trainer and said, I have a Charcot foot, my guess is they would be quickly on Google to find out what that meant, and they wouldn't necessarily understand the safety involved. So if you have, neuropathy, balance problems, you've had open wounds, you have visual impairment, blindness, it would be best to start with a physical therapist and then shift beyond that for more of the maintenance piece with a trainer.
Great, thank you. So I love this question, and this comes up to me as an educator a lot when it comes to diabetes specifically. But this question is coming in from, it's like click on it, Juliana. So Juliana from Maryland.
Yes, hi. I would like to know the best time of day to exercise. Is it morning or evening?
I'm kind of laughing because I think the best time, the ultimate best time, is when you want to do it and when your body does the best with it. So that's honestly where I would start, because we can work around some other things. So my sister and I are incredibly similar in a lot of ways, but I am a morning exerciser, and she hates exercise in the morning. She exercises right before supper, and I don't like that idea at all. So we would only be successful if we chose the time of day that best suited us. But beyond that, now let's look at blood glucose, because that really guides it a bit. So first thing in the morning, oftentimes our body has a natural little increase in our blood sugar level as our body, the hormones prepare to wake up and get us going for the day. So that's kind of a good time to exercise first thing in the day when you're, up, move around a little bit, and then go ahead and exercise. And that can tend to be pretty safe as far as blood glucoses go. You'd want to do a finger stick or check your CGM first before you get started. I would say the least opportune time, if we look at blood glucoses, would often be before a meal, because our gas tank is empty. If you eat lunch and then 4 hours later you're getting hungry, it's getting to be supper time, and that's your time to exercise, you just might be at a higher risk of getting low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. So certainly, if that's the time of the day you like, it's important to check a blood sugar, get blood sugar up if needed with a snack, and then go ahead and exercise. But that's going to give you the greatest challenges as far as blood sugar goes. Then, once we eat a meal, the couple hours after the meal is eaten, our blood sugars naturally increase a little bit because we just put fuel in the tank. So a nice way to burn off the glucose is to do some exercise. In fact, there was a study done a few years ago that looked at blood sugar changes with exercise. And if individuals did one bout of exercise for 45 minutes, they did have improvements in blood glucose. But people who did 15 minutes shortly after each of the 3 meals of the day for 45 minutes, just the same, they actually had better blood sugar improvements. So basically, you're putting fuel in your body, and then within a short period of time, you're pulling it back off. So blood glucoses can stay a little bit more similar over time. We don't have those big spikes and drops. So I'd say early in the morning, if that suits you and your body and your schedule, or half an hour to an hour after a meal works nicely as well.
So the other thing I'll throw in there is if you are on insulin, particularly bedtime insulin, like Elantus or Basaglar, you're on insulin pump. One of the things that can happen, particularly when you're in a new exercise program, is you can see low blood sugars overnight. So, and that can actually happen anywhere from 7 to 24 hours later. But if you are exercising like at 8 o'clock at night, you go to bed at 10, 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, you might see some lows. So that's another thing to be aware of if you're on insulin.
Definitely. And
okay,
let me just throw in there, Carla. The other thing is you can work with your diabetes care and education specialist about adjusting for insulin. So if you know that you're going to do exercise at a particular time of day and you're at risk of low blood sugars before that, you can decrease the insulin that you're taking in advance of that exercise. So if you're going to do a fair amount of exercise mid-afternoon, you might work with the diabetes care and education specialist to say, for my before lunch insulin or for what my pump is doing at that time, I'm going to need less because the exercise makes up for it. So you can decrease the insulin that's going into the body in preparation to prevent those lows. And that's really important safety-wise. And like Carla said, especially during the night, that's, especially dangerous.
Yeah. And that brings us to a tip actually on making sure that you're aware of diabetes education programs and certified diabetes care and education specialists. That can help you a lot. They provide services that focus on your concerns about diabetes, will empower you with knowledge and skills to manage it. They link you to support resources in your community, maybe a physical therapist. You can find an ADA-approved program in your area by clicking on the Find the Program link on our webpage, diabetes.org/experts. You can also call the 800 number at 1-800-DIABETES. That's 1-800-342-2383 to ask a member of our call center with assistance in identifying a program near you. So that's another support system. Make an appointment to see a physical therapist, and then they can help you also with your dosing regimen. Okay, we have a really great question here. This one comes in from Vanetta from Delaware. Vanetta, are you on?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I thought I gave my question. Yeah, I also have neuropathy. Mine's chemotherapy induced. I had it before I had diabetes. But walking, any kind of foot activity is difficult for me except for gardening. And that is because I get such joy in gardening. And I can spend 4 to 5 hours, 5 days a week out in the gardens. Is that good enough?
That's really good. So you might notice as I talk through everything we've talked about, I often will say physical activity and exercise, physical activity and exercise. They're not quite interchangeable, but they're pretty similar, and the outcomes can definitely be similar. So I'm going to define those. Physical activity is any movement we do that uses the muscles and uses energy. And for people with diabetes, energy, for all of us, energy is blood glucose. So physical activity can be work activities, recreational activities, child care, or exercise. So exercise is a subcategory. It's a type of physical activity. And the difference is exercise is when you set out to do something with a health benefit in mind. So here's my example. I'm going to walk down to the drugstore and buy a half a gallon of milk. I said drugstore because it's the closest store to me. So my goal here is to go get a gallon of milk. Or I can say I'm going to go for a walk to help improve how my heart works. Now that's exercise. It's pretty much the same walk, right? So they're very, very similar. Where the difference comes in is within those categories. If somebody does a really low-level activity or exercise for not very long, they'll get a small amount of benefit. And as we increase the time or the challenge of the activity or exercise, we get more benefit. So if you're out gardening for hours at a time and you're up and down, squatting and lifting and pulling and digging, that is wonderful physical activity, and you'll get great results. The nice thing about it is you're often off of your feet, or your feet are stable on the ground. It's a lot of core and upper body work and thigh work, so that's not going to be as bothersome to your feet. And probably one of the more important things that came out of that is you love doing it. And the more distracted from neuropathy issues, whatever they came from, the better off we are. I think most people that are on this call that have neuropathy will tend to notice that the symptoms are definitely bad when you're using your feet, but another really tough time is during the night. Well, why is that? Your feet are laying there not doing anything. That's kind of the point. Your nerves have nothing else to pay attention to except for the irritating signals that are going up to your brain saying there's pain, there's pain, there's pain. So a lot of people struggle to sleep well and have to take medication to help that. The more distracted we can be with doing things of enjoyment, a little bit less symptomatic things will be. So, you bring up such a good point, choosing an activity that we enjoy that you can manage really well in spite of having neuropathy. So thanks so much for that, Vanetta.
So we have a question now on weather from Miss Lloyd from Brooklyn, New York.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Yes, my question, because I'm here in Brooklyn and it's hot. And I was wondering, is it a good idea to not exercise or to exercise despite the weather? Because some people, like, their mindset is like, if I'm exercising, I'm getting a good sweat going on, it's really, my body's detoxing and I'm going to be in good shape. But I'm just curious to find out what is the correct answer to that.
Yeah, too much is definitely too much. Like, it's nice to break a sweat. I am going to throw out there for people who don't want to break a sweat, you can still accomplish a lot without that, but it gets dangerous. So definitely on days that it's really hot, and I'm in upstate New York. I know Brooklyn's going to be the same. It gets humid, and I know lots of people on this call are from really humid places. So our body puts out too many fluids and electrolytes, and we can really get into trouble. So taking extra precautions, trying to exercise where the cooler parts of the day if possible, lowering down the intensity of an exercise so it doesn't feel like it's so stressful, doing things indoors near a fan or air conditioning, making sure you're taking in generally just water to help replace fluids. All those are really, really important points. Probably the biggest thing is to just try to find a time that is better during the day and settle down the intensity. I remember years ago I went to a fun run and it was like 92 degrees out, and one of the people in the group said everybody has to take their watches off because we needed to pay attention to how our bodies felt, not anything else. We couldn't look at that time. So really be safe. Also, some people that have autonomic neuropathy, which is different than peripheral neuropathy, it works with the parts of your body that should work automatically. Your heart beats without you thinking about it. Your breathing takes place without you thinking about it. If people have autonomic neuropathy, those things can struggle. And one problem with that is we don't sense being thirsty. Older adults don't sense being thirsty either. So now, if you're not taking in fluid and you're putting out excess fluid through sweat, it really can become dangerous. The other thing, don't be tricked by not seeing sweat or, it's not dripping off your head. If there's a little bit of a breeze, it goes away right away, but you're still sweating. So kind of assume if you're dressed heavily in the cool months or if it's warm and humid, you are sweating and you sure want to be taking in water to make up for that. And I'll grant you a few days off in the heat.
Great. Running a fun run at 90 plus degrees doesn't sound like it's a fun run. So,
not so fun.
Yeah. So we have a question coming in from Clarence, and there's actually a couple questions along this line. So Clarence from Atlanta.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. My problem here is that I have lost a considerable amount of weight. When at my heaviest, I was up to 367 pounds, and I'm only 5'6". I have reduced that down now to 214 pounds. I still have a good deal of belly fat. The problem is when I was able to do my most effective exercise, I was able to go to the senior center. I am a senior citizen, by the way, and I was able to exercise in the heated pool, and that made things so much easier. But now when I'm bone to bone on my right knee, the cartilage is gone, has been for a long time. What kind of exercises can I do to lose this excess weight, the belly, inner thighs, and things like that, the hips?
Yeah, so the pool is such a fantastic option for anybody with arthritis or painful conditions in anything under the water. So typically low back, hips, knees, ankles, feet are all better off in a pool where there's less stress on those. So if there still is any opportunity to get back in the pool, and I know with the pandemic a lot of things had closed, and I know I'm starting to see many things open up again, so I'm hoping you can get back to a routine that did work. Any equipment, again, I'm not a huge fan of equipment. I don't like people to buy things that they're not going to use, but boy, if you're going to use it, oftentimes a stationary bike, there's so much less stress in the knee on a bike than there is with walking. So that's another possibility. There's little bike pedals that go on the floor that are quite inexpensive. They can be used as well. And back to the strength training. So, it's easy to think strength training doesn't burn calories, but the more muscle mass we have, the higher our metabolism is. So if somebody carries a good amount of muscle, they will burn more calories all throughout the day and night. So I look at like Jack LaLanne, who was, so muscle bound. I bet he had a really high metabolism. So if you can do strength training that doesn't bother the knee, and hopefully can even help the knee, you build more muscle, your body uses all your fuels, glucose and fat, better, your metabolism is boosted, and it can allow you to continue to lose weight. The big thing with strength training is you can often work around those spots that are so troublesome and still gain a lot. Core strengthening for the belly area, anything you can do to burn calories. But again, your metabolism is boosted with more muscle. So, working, it sounds weird, but doing biceps curls and getting stronger upper arms makes your body in general burn fat better. So go to the strength training or anything that takes weight off of those areas, pool, stationary bike, again, sitting exercises, those sorts of things. So hopefully that helps out. I hope we can get back in the pool.
Yeah, no kidding. So a question for me is, could you clarify how, we were talking about activity and how to do it, but why do it? What is the benefit when it comes to reducing heart disease and stroke, which are a much higher risk for people who have diabetes? So is exercise helpful for them?
Super helpful. So when we look at things like heart disease and stroke, there are certain risk factors. Some we say are modifiable and some are not modifiable. Age is not modifiable. We're all going to, each year you get older. If you're male or female, not modifiable necessarily. But there's other things that are modifiable that are risk factors. So exercise really helps to decrease several of the risk factors. Exercise helps to lower blood pressure in an individual with high blood pressure. It's interesting. It only drops it a few points. So you're not going to do exercise and think, oh, my blood pressure was 140/90. I'm going to do exercise, it's going to be 120/80. It doesn't work that way. But clinically, we know that just a few points decrease in blood pressure specifically decreases risk of stroke. So it does help with that. It helps our cholesterol levels. So the healthy cholesterol, the HDLs, are increased with exercise, and the unhealthy cholesterol, the LDLs, the lousy cholesterol, decreases with exercise. The other thing specific to heart disease is exercise makes the heart work better, so it's not impacted so much with certain activities. And if we exercise and use our leg and arm muscles more, then everything we do during the day is less stressful and we'll call on the heart less. So if I do leg strengthening, then climbing stairs or standing up from a chair isn't going to seem that hard for my body because I've made it strong enough to do that well. So my heart is not going to be strained. You know, it's funny, we look at how hard we exercise, but one of the most challenging things we do during a day is stand up from a chair. It takes a lot of leg work to do that. And if you got legs that are stronger, it's less of a challenge, so less of a strain to your blood pressure, to your heart, so that can decrease the risk of heart attack and stroke. I'm looking up I'm going to, before we end, at some point, I'm going to read a quote, and I'll come back to it. I'm looking it up because I don't want to misquote it. So I'm ready for the next question.
Okay. So the next question is coming in from Ola Miller from St. Petersburg, Florida. Ola.
Yes, I would like to know how many days, what is the best rule of thumb for the number of days and the time limit of exercise?
Yeah, so the guidelines for people with diabetes, which happen to be the same guidelines for all American adults, are to get 150 total minutes in a week. I hesitate to say that 150 because it sounds so big, but 150 minutes a week. It's stated that way because it gives us flexibility. What does our body want to do? What do we want to do? Somebody could do 15 10-minute segments of exercise over the course of a week. Somebody else could do 3 workouts that are, I got ahead of myself on my math. Let's go to 5 workouts that are 30 minutes each. You can mix it up. With diabetes, it's nice to have at least every other day because what we do one day helps to lower blood sugar. After the second day, that goes away. So an every other day pattern works out fine. I generally like to have people do about 5 days a week, maybe at that half-hour mark. It meets those guidelines. It's a nice routine. It helps the insulin to kind of stay more level. So a nice way to do the 150 minutes is 5 days a week for 30 minutes. But you can rely on those shorter segments if that works better for you.
Great. So we have another online question that is a little different slant. What exercises do you recommend if you have osteoporosis and diabetes?
That's a great question. So osteoporosis, thinning of the bones, there's a clear relationship to type 1 diabetes and osteoporosis. But surprisingly, there's a relationship to type 2 diabetes with type 2 diabetes and fracture because of osteoporosis. And it's found that people fracture even if their bone density is pretty normal. So there's a couple of types of exercises that we've talked about that are especially helpful to build bone. Those are weight-bearing exercises and strength training. So if you do weight-bearing exercises like walking where there's impact into the lower body, that'll help to build bone. So there's a set of people going, no, that's what I said I can't do because it hurts. You can only do the best you can. That's one way to help bones get stronger. But the other way is through strength training. So if somebody does an overall strength training program, arms, legs, and core, that's going to help the bones to at least maintain their density, perhaps get a little stronger. And then the other really critical piece, almost all fractures from osteoporosis are because of a fall. So if we have better balance, then in spite of having low bone density, our risk of fall decreases. So strength training and balance work go together to really help all of us, osteoporosis, low bone density, with diabetes, to have less risk of a fracture.
Thank you. We are unfortunately running out of some time, but Karen, why don't you bring in that quote, number 1, and then I have another question for you.
fantastic. I have it right in front of me. So this is from Dr. Robert Butler, who was at the National Institute on Aging. He's passed away, but he was well into his 80s. And he said, if exercise could be packaged in a pill, it would be the single most widely prescribed and beneficial medicine in the nation, because exercise has so many positive benefits. Now, it is a heck of a lot harder to exercise than to swallow a pill, and believe me, I understand that. But it is nice to know that if you can be physically active or exercise, you're really doing a lot of positive things for many systems in your body. And I think the key is that, it's come up a lot in this call, is to be able to choose the exercise that best suits you, your goals, what your body can do, looking at the positives to try to do the best that you can.
Great. I love that quote. There's also a great video, 23 and a half hours, that's all about exercise. And we have 24 hours a day, and 23 and a half we can do whatever we want, but we need to give 30 minutes. And I think that's a really fun, it's a great little YouTube. So the last question for you, Karen, is could you give us 3 key takeaway points you want to be sure our listeners take home from today's discussion?
Sure. I think you can very much tell that I think that activity and exercise are super important for everybody, even more so for those with diabetes, at risk of heart disease or stroke. There's just so many physical benefits that can occur that are so positive. There's also emotional benefits that can be really helpful. You feel good about being able to do something. So that's the first piece, exercise, activity, important for everybody. The second key thing, though, is that the program should be individualized. So if it was as easy as, you should go for a walk for 30 minutes, 5 days a week, it would be easy, but there's so many things we need to work around. So, really working to get help however you best can to individualize the program to your goals and your abilities. And the third piece kind of speaks to that. Consider reaching out for help. Talk to your primary care physician. Look at programs in your community. See a physical therapist, an exercise physiologist to get that program that suits you. And if you run into a roadblock along the way, appreciate that happens to almost everybody. Pick yourself up and start again. Don't feel badly about it. That's life. And, try to get back on track as quickly as you can.
Great. I'm so sorry we don't have more time because there are still lots of great questions in the queue. I think we need to ask Karen to come back for another Ask the Experts time because we just have lots of great questions and you've done a great job. So consider staying online. Okay, great. Consider staying online on the phone to complete a short 5-question survey. We want to hear from all of you and hope you will take a few minutes to let us know what you think. To help you feel confident about your ability to manage your diabetes and heart health, we encourage you and your loved ones to talk to your doctor and dietitian about your risks. Go to knowdiabetesbyheart.org and learn more. Register for the next event at diabetes.org/experts. Sign up for diabetes education near you, and sign up for ADA's free Living with Type 2 Diabetes program. Links to these resources can be found on our registration webpage, diabetes.org/experts. Thank you all for great questions you called and wrote in with. We are sorry we are unable to get to all of them. As I said, there's still a lot in the queue, and I love them. They're great. If you have questions about this event, you are welcome to contact us at askADA@diabetes.org. That's askADA@diabetes.org, or by calling 1-800-DIABETES. That's 1-800-342-2383. Thriving with diabetes takes a village, and we're here to support you. Special thanks to our expert, Karen Kemmis. I am Carla Cox. On behalf of the ADA team, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you at our next Ask the Expert event on July 13, Meal Prep for the Summer Months. And on July 27, we have a special Prevent Sight Loss, What's in Your Toolbox. I'll turn it over to the survey portion to close out our program. Best wishes for good health.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to give us feedback on our event. To provide your responses, press the corresponding number on the keypad of your phone. And for our participants online, please check on the poll section below the Ask a Question form and click to submit your responses. Okay, here's our first question. Overall, how satisfied were you with today's event? Start and maintain an active lifestyle. Use a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being not at all satisfied and 5 being very satisfied. I'll repeat that again for you. Overall, how satisfied were you with today's event? Start and maintain an active lifestyle. Use a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being not at all satisfied and 5 being very satisfied. And when we take a moment for the next question to come up, I'd like to remind you about one of our programs supporting people living with type 2. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes or could benefit from a refresher, consider signing up for ADA's free program, Living with Type 2 Diabetes. Participants receive information via email and e-booklets throughout the year-long program on topics including emotional health, eating healthy, and physical fitness, as well as tips on managing and living well with type 2 diabetes. Okay, here is our next question. A regular exercise program is important because it helps to press 1 for reduce the risk for high blood pressure, but press 2 for reduce the risk for heart disease, press 3 for improve balance, press 4 for improve insulin resistance, or press 5 for all of the above. I'll repeat that again for you. A regular exercise program is important because it helps to press 1 for reduce the risk for high blood pressure, press 2 for reduce the risk for heart disease, press 3 for improve balance, press 4 for improve insulin resistance, or press 5 for all of the above. And before we go on to question 3, we'd like to let you know that if you missed a part of today's event or would just like to listen again, we have recordings available on our website. You can go to diabetes.org/experts and click on the past recordings section to hear this episode as well as all previous calls. Okay, ready for question 3. Which member of your healthcare team is best qualified to design an exercise program for you when you have an injury, arthritis, or other challenge? Press 1 for a nurse, press 2 for primary care provider, press 3 for physical therapist, or press 4 for dietitian. I'll read that again. Which member of your healthcare team is best qualified to design an exercise program for you when you have an injury, arthritis, or other challenge? Press 1 for nurse, press 2 for primary care provider, press 3 for physical therapist, or press 4 for dietitian. Before we move on to the next question, we'd like to remind you again that our next Ask the Experts Q&A event will be on June 22nd. Our expert will be joining us to talk about diabetes and technology. You can register for that event at diabetes.org/experts, or you can contact 1-800-DIABETES to get registered. Again, that phone number is 1-800-342-2383. Okay, on to question 4. As a result of this event, how likely are you to schedule a visit with your healthcare provider to talk about the link between heart disease and diabetes? Press 1 for not likely, press 2 for somewhat likely, or press 3 for very likely. I'll repeat that again. As a result of this event, how likely are you to schedule a visit with your healthcare provider to talk about the link between heart disease and diabetes? Press 1 for not likely, press 2 for somewhat likely, or press 3 for very likely. And while we await the final question, remember that a diabetes self-management education and support program will focus on your concerns about diabetes. This program will help to empower you with the knowledge and skills to help you manage your diabetes. You can find a link to an ADA-recognized Diabetes Education Program at the bottom of our Ask the Experts event webpage, which again is diabetes.org/experts. Or you can speak to a member of our call center at 1-800-DIABETES, and they'll help you find a program in your area. Again, that phone number is 1-800-342-2383. Okay, here's our final question. As a result of this event, how likely are you to sign up for or continue to participate in a diabetes self-management education program? Remember, diabetes education programs usually require a referral from a healthcare provider. Press 1 for not likely, press 2 for somewhat likely, or press 3 for very likely. And I'll repeat that again. As a result of this event, how likely are you to sign up for or continue to participate in a diabetes self-management education program? Press 1 for not likely, press 2 for somewhat likely, or press 3 for very likely. All right, thank you for staying with us and providing your feedback on today's event. We offer many thanks to our expert, as well as our support vendors and sponsors, and the No Diabetes by Heart collaboration. This concludes today's program in the Ask the Experts Q&A series. Please check out our website for recordings from this event and additional resources. And lastly, if you have any additional feedback on our team, please stay on the line to leave us a message. Thank you and stay well.